Hello and welcome back to Realistic Fish Keeping. This is week 6 of how to set up your own fish tank or aquarium. Last week we discussed phosphates, algae, lights and some good plants for beginners. This is the penultimate episode in the series. Being week 6 we can regard the setup as fully cycled, but it won't be fully mature until 6 months. In this episode we will be discussing what that means, but also the final episode next week will be the tank at 6 months. That's right, the fish tank time machine is nearly ready. Also this week, I want to talk about how many fish you can fit comfortably in your tank, fish health, and also dispel a myth that a fish will only grow to the size of its aquarium. But first, an update on the tank. This is what the tank looked like last week, and this is what the tank looks like today. Big changes again. The Swordtails have been relocated to their new breeding tank, and they have been replaced with the new inhabitants. These are a type of guppy. You may have heard of guppies before. They are a very popular fish due to their vibrant colours, and I'm attempting to breed them. Breeding guppies is a rewarding endeavour, but can really begin an interest in fish keeping. This particular strain is called albino full red back koi. You'll notice that the filter has been moved to the front of the tank to make way for a basket at the back. This is a contraption I've put together to catch the baby guppies. They instinctively find shelter when they're born, and I've found a basket works really well. I have also reduced the amount that the light is on per day to just 6 hours. The shrimps have really taken down the hair algae, but the cyanobacteria has persisted. Unfortunately, some of the plants were so thick in it, I had to remove those. Which brings me on to the next inhabitants. You may have already noticed them. Corydoras catfish. More specifically, Trilineatus corydoras. There are many species available, but the job that these fish do is use their digging mouths to remove debris and food from in between the gaps in the gravel. Some issues can be solved by adding fish to a fish tank, but it can also cause problems. Diseases can be brought into a fish tank as hitchhikers or new fish entering the tank. There are so many different diseases, I'll only be able to mention a few of the most common. So I'll do the top 5 most common I have come across and what you can do about them. Number 5, dropsy. I've already done a video on dropsy, and I'll do in-depth videos about the other 4 on this list, but I feel like dropsy is a particularly difficult one to cure. Dropsy isn't actually a disease, but rather a symptom of a number of different issues. Mainly diagnosed by scales raised to look like a pine cone. Dropsy is the result of fluid retention. Treatment varies depending on species and cause. But with salt-tolerant species such as these guppies, isolation, no food, and a salt bath for 3 to 5 days is a good option to try. It's not always possible to cure any disease, but catching it early gives you the best chance. Number 4, flukes. Diagnosed by the fish scraping over the rough surfaces in the tank several times. These are an external bacteria that are often present on fish but can increase in numbers beyond what the fish's immune system can handle. Either the fish is ill for another reason, or the water quality isn't good, so its immunity is compromised. The best treatment I've found is a powdered one, Flukesolve by Vetarc. It's a very effective treatment which also works against worms, which is in at number 3. There are several different types of worms that affect fish, but are internal, diagnosed when feeding plenty of food. But fish are becoming thin and hollow around the belly. Treatment as above, but I've also tried Cloverleaf Absolute Plus invert friendly, if there are shrimps and snails in the tank especially. it's important to buy a medication that won't also harm anything else you have in the tank. In at number 2, we have fin rot, a very common one where the edges of the fins become frayed or look like they're melting. It's often bacterial and can be treated with API Melifix if mild and caught early. It is important to note that Melifix isn't always a suitable option, as it does remove a lot of oxygen from the water. Fish like bettas and gourami would do better with the alternative. You can also add almond leaves and aldecones for their natural antibacterial properties. Salt for more salt-tolerant species is also a good option. At number 1 is the one I'm most commonly asked about, ick, also known as white spot. Like humans get spots or pimples when stressed, fish can often get white spot. Although the spot itself is alive, falls off, reproduces in the substrate, and passes on to other fish. Like many diseases, stress gives white spot the perfect opportunity to breed and grow. Here are several stages starting with the stressed fish. The immune system is compromised, allowing the parasite passage to the fish's skin and the fins where it begins to feed off it. The white spot you see is actually the fish trying to defend itself by forming a cyst around the parasite. It works, and the cyst will fall off and onto the floor of the fish tank. However, evolution has given the parasite a super weapon, and it actually uses the cyst as protection, and at this point has taken on enough nutrients to begin dividing itself and reproducing. After that, the cyst hatches, releasing hundreds of new parasites, which is why white spot is so contagious. But it's at this stage, however, that the parasite is most vulnerable and treatment is most effective. I like API white spot cure, as it's always worked for me. I'd also just like to add that it can be difficult to diagnose fish ailments, especially if you're new to fish keeping. And my advice would be to do plenty of research first. But a product I always have on hand is Aquacare General Tonic. It's an all-rounder and good to use as a precautionary treatment if you suspect something not quite right, but you're not sure what's going on. It won't do any harm if you follow the instructions on the label. I'd always do a water test first, just to make sure, but failing that, a dose of General Tonic could avoid a total catastrophe. At this point, I'd just like to say that I'm not being sponsored by any of these companies. I just like these products, and I've tried them all, and they've always worked for me. I have set up an Amazon shop. These aren't products that I'm selling, but I do get a very small commission if you were to buy something from my shop. I'll put the link in the description box below, and all of the products I've mentioned in this video are on the shop. So that's enough now on the shelf. Next, I want to cover how many fish I can fit in my fish tank, and the short answer is however many the ecosystem can sustain. Your tank is an ecosystem entirely enclosed from the rest of the world. Many factors will determine the successfulness of your ecosystem. Going back to the very first episode, I said that the filter is the beating heart of the ecosystem. I chose a large filter, and ultimately that will allow me more wiggle room in terms of adding more fish. If you have chosen a very small filter, again, that will reflect on the number of fish you can have in the same way. If you overstock it, something has got to give. It's called carrying capacity, and it's a principle that says that there is a maximum amount of life that an environment can sustain before something has to give. There is a rule of thumb used by aquarists, which is the 1 inch per gallon rule. So if a fish can grow to 1 inch maximum size, and you have a 20-gallon tank, you can have around 20 fish. I personally don't like this rule, as there are too many variables. So now that tank is 6 weeks old, it's fully cycled. Well, hopefully. It may take another couple of weeks, depending on your situation. So what is the difference between fully cycled and fully mature? A fully cycled tank is safe for you to stock your tank to full capacity, whatever that may be. It will depend on your unique setup, and there's a good number of beneficial bacteria in there. A fully mature tank is biologically and ecologically balanced and the parameters are less likely to fluctuate, mainly because your beneficial bacteria is fully established. Things like water changes, cleaning the sponges thoroughly, won't have a huge effect on the bacteria lost, and this will grow very quickly. This brings me on to the final topic of the day, the myth that a fish will only grow to the size of its aquarium. For this example, I'm going to use the goldfish, because everybody knows what a goldfish is, and it's a fish that would otherwise grow quite large if given the space to do so. This is where the myth comes from. We have to go back to the carrying capacity principle that I mentioned earlier. It applies here too. So there are several factors affecting the goldfish's ability to grow, and its carrying capacity that's at play here. As the fish grows, the water quality might suffer. Again, that's stunting the growth of the fish. There will be low oxygen, the stress, and the higher disease risk will all play a role in how long the fish lives. The pool goldfish has been subjected to this awful myth for years. It's super hardy, and people kept them in bowls, sometimes without filtration or oxygen flow, even without changing the water, or almost as bad, changing 100% of the water straight from the tap containing chlorine. Goldfish are super resilient, which is why people thought it was okay because they didn't die right away. People often say that they had goldfish for 3 or 4 or even 5 years in those conditions, and the goldfish never got any bigger. They say this as if it's a triumph, thinking that 5 years is a good age for a goldfish. But in truth, goldfish can live up to 30, even 40 years when kept in large ponds where they can reach their full potential size of around 30 centimetres, instead of the 10 centimetres that they typically reach in a goldfish bowl. So this is where the myth comes from. All that's happening here is the size of the goldfish is stunted, and this leads to an earlier death. And on that cheery note, we have come to the end of this week's episode. Next week, we fast forward to 6 months of the tank being set up. We're going to discuss a little bit more about breeding fish, and we're going to be covering cleaning the filter and how to perform a water change. We'll also talk about general ongoing maintenance and how fish can work together to lower that maintenance for you. Until next time, bye for now.